Hey everyone, and welcome to Business Boutique. I'm so excited about today's interview because this is another special treat for you where I'm showing you some behind the scenes of the Business Boutique Academy, my online training and coaching group. I had the opportunity to sit down with a good friend of mine, Sarah Sloyan. Sarah is the Vice President of Entree Leadership here at Ramsey Solutions, and she has years of experience in sales. We sit down and we talk about all of the aspects of sales, the good, the bad, and the scary. She even teaches us how to overcome our fear of rejection so that we can sell and make an impact. I know that you will love Sarah as much as I do. Check this out. Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm so excited about this week's lesson because we are continuing the conversation around sales. And you know, and I know that this is a struggle in business. And so I'm so excited to have my good friend, Sarah Sloyan, to help teach us. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
So when we were dreaming up what it would look like for the month theme on sales, they're like, who should you interview? I was like, Sarah has a background in sales. Like that's your whole story that Daniel Tardy always tells.
Yes.
So tell our ladies and listeners a little bit about your backstory in sales and then of course what you do today.
Yeah. So I started here 6 years ago, which I always joke it's like dog years. You know,
Yes.
it's like
it feels like you've been here way longer than that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? It's only been 6 years. And I started as a sales advisor. And it's crazy because our whole company at that time was 300 people.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I feel like I've learned so much from that sales background.
Yeah.
Now,
So Tardy stole you. I want that story. Like go back even before
my
here
gosh, yes.
where you were a salesperson that he stole to
So,
be a salesperson here.
Ramsey was my client. I worked for the first 7.5 years outside of college. I worked at a Westin resort and did sales there. And these guys were my client at the time. And we just hit it off. Like I'm a very relational salesperson. So technically you were supposed to like negotiate the contract and then turn it over to a conference planning manager. But anytime they'd come in, I'm like, can we have lunch? Can we hang out? Can we be, I just, I just love it. And so one day, Tardy said, hey, I heard you want to move back to the Southeast. I grew up in Alabama. And I said, yeah, I do. And he said, would you be willing to come work for us? You want to consider that? And I was like, yes.
And where were you living at this time?
Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
My instinct was like, yes. And then I was like, no. Because we were, the economy was really bad at the time. And I was just so grateful that Louie and I both had great jobs. Right. And we owned a house. We were trying to have our second baby. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I started like dumping all the reasons like, oh, this is not a good idea. Yeah. And somehow he talked me into coming out and interviewing anyway.
Tardy, and also a sales guy.
Yeah, you can see where this is going. Yes. So they actually flew me to Orlando because we were having our Master Series event there. And I was so sick. You know when you get that head cold and you fly and it like moves into your ears?
Yes. Okay. Oh my gosh, the pressure.
So I get here, yes. But talking about sales, I get here, I can't hear anybody. So I just have to.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're saying. Yeah. Oh, was I supposed to respond?
Yeah.
So came out to Orlando, met everybody, Jack, Rick, from HR all the way up. And Christy, I don't know what happened. I remember being in line to get on the plane and calling my husband and saying, this is crazy, but I think we should do it. Yeah. I think we should move across country with our almost 2-year-old and find a renter for our house. And I think this is what I just feel like there's nowhere I will grow spiritually, personally, professionally like this place. Yeah. And I don't know what made me feel that, but I just remember distinctly feeling that way. Yeah. And then here we are 6 years ago. Right. From sales advisor at the time.
On Entree Leadership Team.
On Entree Leadership Team.
Okay, what were you selling?
So I was selling at the time, we had our Master Series event, which and then we also, I don't know if you remember this, we had a Performance Series event. So Master Series was business owners, and then they would turn around and send they would send their team members to EPS. Right. And so we had that to sell. And
so it was mainly events.
It was mainly events. Yeah. Yes. And then Dave put out that initiative to the company and said, hey, we can't all be Dave dependent. One day I want to be able to cut back on time here and spend more time at the lake and with my grandkids. Right. And so we said, oh, well, our events are all Dave dependent. What do we do? And so after we panicked and ran around like crazy people, we started thinking, okay, well, how do we take some of this stuff digitally? Because up to that point, we were only able to help people if they were able to fly in.
Physically at an event.
Yes, and you think about business owners, a lot of the business owners we work with, like they are their business.
Right, they can't go away.
So they come to an event for a week, that means they are closing their business for a week. Right. And so I was like, all right, there's a lot of pluses here. And so anyway, we we started going more digitally, and we started getting creative about how even in events, we stopped being so Dave dependent and started growing things. And Tardy said, hey, I think we need a director of sales. And I was like, oh, I don't want to have to rely on other people because we're all commission-based.
Right.
I said, you're telling me that I know how many times I have to pick up the phone and do my job well and serve people to take home this paycheck. You're telling me I have to rely on these people to pick up the phone? You know, I'm like,
I don't know about this.
I don't know about this, you know. And at this time, so I don't know if I've ever told you this, but the week I started, so it all happened really fast.
Yeah.
Tardy said, hey, can you start in 2 weeks? And I thought, I got to put in a 2-week notice and physically drive across the country.
Right.
And start in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so I did it. So it was really fast. And that Friday I started, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
All in the same week. Yeah.
All in the same week.
Yeah.
And the first month and a half I was here, my husband was still working in Tucson. He was working through the end of the year.
Yeah.
So it was an adventure. I like to, I guess, group all of my transition things at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, let's have a baby, start a new job, move across the country. And I don't know how it all, like, it's amazing when you look back on God's timing and you just, in the moment, you're like, this feels crazy.
Yeah.
But then you look back and you're like, wow, look at what that set up. I came back from having a baby. The director of sales conversation started and shifted into that role and was super nervous. I'd never led people before. Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing, which is ironic considering we're entree leadership.
Right,
you know, we're teaching other people how to lead. And I'm like, I've never done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't physically teaching people.
Yeah.
But, I moved into director of sales. And then I guess 20 months ago, shifted into a vice president of entree leadership. And now we have a team of about 55 folks. And that last 20 months has been like leadership boot camp for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like every hard situation, people-wise, business-wise, it's like in a 20-month period, I feel like we went through that.
Yeah.
And exercised that muscle. You know, I was familiar with a lot of that leadership stuff from leading the sales team.
Right.
But then leading 55 people, you're leading leaders and who are leading leaders.
Right. And this is a massive business unit. Like, we're not talking about entree leadership as one of our small, little, tiny, no. This is a huge business unit within our organization. And so you really were thrown in the deep end. But I love this because you have such a cool story over such a short amount of time in the grand scheme of things, which our organization is one that honors hard work. Like, if you're a go-getter, you'll go places because they see that and they, give you those opportunities. They go across the country and steal you and things like that. But I love this sales training because you have a background in that, and that obviously, and you and I know this because I feel like are natural at this, but it really is a business of influence. It's a business of relationship building. It's a business of communication. Those are all things that we're good at and comfortable with. And I'd be willing to bet y'all are probably good at and comfortable with too. Communication, relationship building, like influencing and, connecting with people. But then when we hear the word sales, we just freak out.
It feels intimidating, doesn't it?
It feels intimidating. Yeah. It also feels negative. Like, a lot of people, especially some of our small business owners that are new to business or new to sales, they just have this whole negative connotation around the word. It feels pushy, aggressive, used car salesman.
Yes.
You're going to take advantage of me. I don't want to get on people's nerves. I have friends in an MLM that drive me completely crazy, and I don't want to be anything like them. And you have all these negative ideas. And so in your mind, that is what sales is. And so if that's what sales is, I don't want anything like that. So I don't want anything to do with sales.
Right.
Well, if you're not selling, you're not in business. So let's just start with just, what do you think in your experience, maybe even some of, what you've experienced, but also leading others in sales, what do you think is the number one fear? Like, what's the biggest fear that we have that makes us like freak out at this topic?
Yeah. I think it's probably somewhere around rejection.
Okay.
I think we all have that fear of like, oh, what if they think this about me? We make up these stories in our heads about what's going to happen when we pick up that phone or we ask for the sale. Right. But I think it always comes back down to being rejected.
Yeah, and that's a reality, right? Like, you're going to get rejected. You're going to get told no. It's not if, but when. You will lots of times a day, especially if you're in sales. Okay, so for someone that's new, like, let's imagine that you were training a new salesperson on your team back in the sales days. And you were director of sales and you have this new salesperson and they're nervous and you're trying to equip them to face those first rejections, because it does get easier.
Yes.
Right? Like, the more rejections you get, the more you're like, whatever, let me pick up the phone again. Right? So let's talk about the first ones, like how you strengthen those muscles and gain those skills to pick yourself up and dust yourself off after you get those first few rejections with those people that tell you your price is too high or, whatever, all the things. So like, kind of how do you help people get up for that?
I think that the game changer for me was when I realized that my job as a salesperson was not to always get a yes.
Okay.
So ideally, that's what happens. That's the path I like the best.
Sure.
But my job is to help that person make a decision about whether this is right for them or not. So think about a time where you have a really big outstanding decision. Maybe it's purchasing a car. Maybe it's purchasing a house, whatever that decision is. Until you make the decision, when you're just kind of waffling and thinking about it, you kind of have this like discontent or this kind of like, it bothers you until
anxiousness,
until you're like, yeah, we're going to do it, or this is the right one.
Right.
So my job as a salesperson is to help you make that decision, because you're not going to stop feeling that feeling until you facilitate an answer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times salespeople are reluctant to push people to make a decision because they don't want to be too pushy. But the reality is you're not serving them well until you help facilitate that answer.
Right.
So if you see yourself as kind of the guide and you're like, hey, let me understand what your pain point is that and see whether this is the right fit or not.
Right.
And then honestly, sometimes our salespeople, we decide this isn't a good fit. So
Right.
sometimes our salespeople, we do say, hey, this is not great timing for you right now because you're just starting and the revenue doesn't make sense. Why don't we start out with some of these free options?
Right.
Why don't I hook you up with these podcast episodes that hit exactly that pain point? Why don't we I'll send you a book for free. So I think it's important as a salesperson to know your job isn't always to facilitate a yes, it's to facilitate an answer.
Yeah.
And to hook them up with whatever the best solution for them is at this time.
Yeah.
And that's not always the best decision for them forever. They might be in a different position 6 months from now.
Right. And it's not for everyone, right? Like everything you're offering or selling is not for everyone. And so if you have the confidence as a business owner to help them make that decision, like you said, whether it's a yes or a no, then you're setting them up for success and you up for success, because you don't want that person that's not the right fit to get the thing. I'll give you an example. We have my course Business Idea Bootcamp, and it's specifically for our dreamers to help them find their idea. So inevitably, when we're doing a big launch or a big push around this, I'm doing Facebook Lives and stuff, because I'm just excited, sometimes we'll pull in people that aren't dreamers, that it's not for.
Right.
And they'll say, hey, would this benefit me if I already am running a business? And I'm like, no, it's to help you find your business idea. You clearly have one. Thanks. Move along. We'll see you in the academy, right? Like, I don't want you to get it because you're going to get it and be like, well, this is dumb. This didn't help me at all. Right. So I love that idea of you're not pushing them to buy the product. You're facilitating them making a decision. And I love I read somewhere 60% of sales occur after the fourth interaction.
Yes.
So to
Amen.
your point, like that first call is just planting a seed for the second call or the third call or 3 months from now when they are ready and they're going to think of you and call you.
Right.
And so I love that example because it takes the pressure off of, I've got to get a yes. No, you've just got to help them get rid of that angst. And when you think of it from that perspective, Sarah, you really are serving them. We always talk about this as sales is serving. You're helping them get rid of that angst of not sure if that's for them. So I love that example.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the personality styles, because I know that there's also this myth that to sell well, you have to be extroverted and outgoing and a social butterfly and all these things, super talkative and super confident. Like, there's this idea that if you're not that, then you can't sell. You'll never be good at leading a business or being super confident. So let's talk about, what does it look like to sell in different personality styles?
Yeah. I would say one of our best salespeople is not what you just painted.
Yeah.
I mean, he's fantastic and we love him, but he's not the first one in a party, like getting everybody else on the dance floor, I think that the best thing is it supersedes personality style. It's, do you really care about that person? And are you selling by serving? Are you asking the right questions? Are you truly interested in getting them the thing that's going to most benefit them? And that has nothing to do with personality style. It's simply caring.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. So what are some questions that you can ask that communicate that you care and that can help them figure out if something's right for them? Like, let's just give them some like tools on their tool belt, sales training one-on-one of like, what would that look like to ask some of those questions?
The overarching goal in those questions is just to find out what their pain point is. And a lot of times people won't always admit right away. You have some people that go right to it, right? I remember I would have some calls where they would jump right away and say, hey, my wife's going to divorce me if I don't figure out how to make it to my kids' games and stop doing work from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. That's kind of rare. Usually the first thing they get, well, I was kind of thinking about this, and they give you kind of a vague answer.
Yeah.
So you've got to ask the questions that get to that real root of their problem. Like, all right, well, you can start shallow. You can say, hey, talk to me about, if this is an incoming lead, like talk to me about what even made you interested in this, and how long have you had I talk to a lot of business owners. So a lot of times for me, it's, how long have you had your business, and what is it on a day-to-day basis? Like when you get excited, what is that thing that you're most excited about this year? Talk to me about kind of your hopes is what I'm getting at. But I find if I say what you're most excited about, it doesn't feel as cheesy.
Yeah.
And then I say, talk to me about what absolutely drains you. Yeah. What's that thing that keeps you up at night? What's that thing that you're just really struggling to solve?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to read that person. Sometimes if you go too far too fast, they'll kind of shut down.
Yeah.
So I find if you can ask some questions that get them talking and feeling comfortable with you, and they're like, oh, this person isn't trying to just turn around and sell me something immediately. They're really trying to understand my world.
Right.
And the more it's like when you go to a doctor. When you go to a doctor and you feel like that doctor really understands the troubles that you're having, then you trust that doctor to prescribe whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But if you feel like you get in there, the doctor runs in, he says, okay, here's your prescription. You're like, wait, we didn't even talk about my symptoms or like what could be going on. He went too far, too fast, and he doesn't even know you.
Yeah.
And then in fact, you're like, I'm definitely not doing that.
Yeah.
That's how it is with sales. You need to gain trust by really understanding what it is that person is dealing with. And once you understand that, they'll probably trust you because you're the expert on whatever it is they're calling you about.
Right.
So they will trust you to then prescribe them whatever it is that needs to happen.
Yeah. I love that doctor analogy. I've never heard that. I love that. And it's something you said before that when you were talking about like what are their fears and their pain points and like what are their hopes and their dreams. It's so funny because I've taught the Academy members this before, but when I'm teaching people about influence, like if you want to win over a crowd on stage, if you want to just influence someone, you need to know two things. You need to know what frustrates them and what motivates them.
That's exactly.
And it really is. It's like, what are the frustrations, the pain points, so you can understand the pain and the challenge that you're dealing with. And what are the motivations? Why do they get up in the morning? What makes them light up? What makes them come alive?
Because people buy emotionally.
That's right.
It's not, they don't buy, people think like, oh, it's a logical process. And some people are very high C and they do buy, but that's a small percentage.
Right.
Most people buy because of the feeling that they have around. It's either they have a fear and whatever solution you're presenting is going to fix that fear.
Right.
Or it's they have this big hope or this dream.
Right.
I've always dreamed of going to Hawaii. I've always dreamed of, what fill in the blank.
Right.
And whatever you're offering is a solution to getting there. It's a vehicle to get there.
Yeah. And I love that if you understand those two things, you can lessen the frustrations, increase the motivations, and then that's where you really are able to serve from that aspect of selling. I love that example. Okay, let's talk about objections. We're going to get them. And this is a real sales training, tactical, how do you train your sales team members, or how did you in the past, or how could we even train the Academy members to overcome objections? Like, it's not something that I want them thinking on the fly necessarily. I want them to think in advance, what are potential objections?
Absolutely.
And how am I going to respond to them?
Yeah, the good news is you're not going to get 50 different objections. You're probably going to get a solid 5 to 10, right? It's usually time, money, whatever. I think if you can start tracking what are the objections I'm getting, and then exactly what you said, think about, okay, and I call those out up front.
Yeah.
I would say when you're talking to somebody and you kind of know they're going to tell me that they are too busy for this.
Yeah.
And so I just call it out like, hey, I imagine you're thinking you're too busy for this. And I just call it out and I address it.
Right.
I also call back to that hope or fear that they originally told me. Here's the deal. Like for us, business owners will call, they'll have this problem, maybe it's around hiring. And I say, hey, this would be a great fit for you. And they're like, oh, I don't have time to come to that event. And I go, okay, you don't have to come to our event, but what are you going to do differently? You've told me you need to change your hiring process. Right. So even if it's not our event, what are you going to do differently in this next year to make that change happen? Because that's what I want at the end of the day.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't care if ideally, I think ours is the very best.
Sure.
But if at the end of the day, what I want you to do is make a change that's going to fix that problem you have. Yeah. And so you've spent 3 years building this business and you still have this problem and you haven't done anything to change it. We're now on the phone. I'm telling you this is a good solution. Yeah. So what are you going to do if this is not the thing? If you can't make time for this, when is this ever going to change?
Yeah, yeah.
So
I love that.
I love just calling them out and then looping back to their hope or their fear or whatever and say, man, as your friend, I'm just concerned for you that if you don't do something, if you don't start addressing this thing that you're telling me is holding you back from that next level of business that you want to reach, that when's that ever going to happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's say that you are having a phone call with someone. These ladies are in all different types of businesses. So sales is going to look different. Some are at trade shows, some are at craft shows, some are, over the phone. Let's say that you're on the phone and the call is going great and you're feeling good. You covered the objections. They're interested. how do you actually make the ask? Because I can't tell you how many people can talk about their business with confidence, but they lose the sale because they never make the ask.
Right.
So let's talk about that.
That is the number one reason why people don't get the sales.
Yeah.
They don't make the ask. And there's different ways depending on your style and how that person that you're talking to interacts best, So you can absolutely, some people like that hard close. We're talking about high Ds that are like, they want to make a decision fast. They don't want to like belabor the point. You can just say, hey, I like to ask them, going back to the objections, I like to ask them like, why would you not do this thing?
Yeah.
And then they'll say, well, I can't afford $2,500. I can only afford $2,000.
Right.
I say, okay, so if we can solve this one objection for you, you're telling me you're in.
Yeah.
So then you've kind of isolated the thing that's going to keep them from doing it. So they can't make excuses.
Right, totally.
Because they've told you, this is the only reason I can. So that's the only reason.
We can fix it.
We can fix it. Yeah. So then you go, all right, well, what if I go ahead and do this first time for you at $2,000 so we can, I want you to get this help. I want you to be able to do this. And since you said that was the only thing holding you back, do you feel good about that? Do you want to go ahead and make that happen?
Yeah.
So that's an easy way because you're hearing them, you're addressing that issue. You're not kind of pretending like it doesn't exist.
Right.
I also think that there's like when we are talking about event tickets, I'll use this as an example. You can give people options.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to go ahead and, so it sounds like this is a great fit. Do you want to go ahead and get this set up today, or do you want me to call you back tomorrow when you're at home and you have your payment information?
Yeah.
Like you're giving them options, but both options lead
buying.
You're buying this thing.
Yeah, totally. I love it.
You want to buy it now or you want to buy it tomorrow?
Right, I love it.
Or like, do you want to go ahead and pay for it all at one time? So let's say it's $5,000. Do you want to go ahead and pay for all $5,000 today, or what we could do is go ahead and do half today, and then I can give you a call back in a month, and we can do the other half.
Right.
So
it's like with our kids. We're like, would you like to eat your fruit or your veggies?
Yes.
Both are great options.
Yes,
You're going to have one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, Teddy Grahams are not an option.
Right.
Fruit or vegetables is what you'll be having.
Exactly. And you don't care as a parent.
Right.
You're like, I
you
just
have
want
the
to eat
illusion
something
of
healthy.
choice. Yeah.
Yes, they feel in control.
That's right.
And so it is nice to let people feel like they're in control of their decision.
Right.
And the reality is you really don't care. It both gets you to a great solution, and it helps serve them.
When I think a lot of times, even in these ladies' businesses, like let's speak specifically to service-based businesses, what I remind them is, I'm like, stop thinking of it as a sale. It is a sale, but think of it as a commitment.
Yes.
So someone's like, hey, I want to go get, my hair highlighter or whatever, and someone's asking you about your prices. You're like, yeah, I've got an opening on Tuesday. Want me to go ahead and put you down?
Exactly.
Like, it's a commitment.
And you're serving them.
That's right.
Because what happens? I go, oh yeah, I should do that. And I'll just call you. And then 1 week goes by, 3 weeks goes by, and I'm like, oh, I got really bad roots. So you are serving them. That's what I think people, I'm a high S on the disc, so I love people and I want everybody to be comfortable, and so I get very uncomfortable if I think I might make other people uncomfortable.
Right.
So in my beginning of sales, I would get call reluctance, and we all know that the number of calls you make equal the numbers. It's math, right?
Right, sure.
If you close this percentage, then you have to make this many calls in order to make this many closes. So I'd call somebody in the morning, I'd call them the next day, and I'm like, oh, they're not answering. They changed their mind. They don't want to talk to me. They're annoyed. I would tell the story in my head, which is number one, the problem, right? That's the first problem. Stop telling yourself stories. So I started realizing if I call them in the morning and I say, hey, I leave a voicemail. I know you're slammed. I'm going to go ahead and try you back this afternoon. Feel free to give me a call before that if you want, but I know you're busy, so I'll just try you back this afternoon. Because I promised them I would call them back that afternoon, then when I called them back that afternoon, I didn't feel like I was annoying them.
Right.
I promised them I was going to call.
Right, you got to fulfill that promise.
Yes. So there are little tricks like that you can do so you don't feel like you are, one, it helps with your call reluctance, and you're not telling that story in your head that you're annoying them.
Right.
You've made that commitment to do that.
Let's talk about, and I think this is really important for the ladies in different businesses, let's talk about the importance of the aspect of believing in what you do. Because I think they believe in what they do until it comes time to talk to someone else. Where like the example I give of myself, because I have like a medium to high S depending on the environment I'm in, I guess. But when someone comes through my book signing line, Sarah, and they're like, oh, I got your book. Do you think it'll help me? I'm not like, oh, I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Let's talk about it.
I wrote it just when I was like half asleep in my basement. No, I'm like, yes, it's going to help you. I'm so excited. This is the plan you need. And when you follow this plan, you're going to win. And I can't wait to watch you win. Like, I have this aggressive confidence over them because I really believe in what I do. And so in my mind, selling a book is not me getting a bunch of money and taking advantage of them. It's setting this woman up to win in her business. And so that gives me such confidence to sell because I know that I'm helping people. So let's talk about just like remembering some of that, like remembering the service aspect of your business. Like to your point, when you're selling an event, Like these are events that are changing people's lives when they come to these events. It's changing their businesses. And so how do you use that to fuel your confidence when you're on some of these sales calls?
Yeah, 100%. If you are not your biggest advocate, why should other people think that your service is valuable? So when you start that call and you already feel like, oh, I'm about to pitch this price that feels too high. Oh, they hear that in your voice.
Right.
Again, people buy emotionally. They sense that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you are having trouble on the phone figuring out how to have that confidence, I would suggest you sit down and you look at what is the gap? Am I afraid my prices are too high? Okay, well, why did I price it that way? Why do I think these are justified? I mean, literally just doing this exercise and writing out why your product is the best, why your product is absolutely worth the price that you're asking, or it's a deal, you know?
Totally.
Write all that out. It gives you such confidence. And then when you're having those days where you're just feeling kind of run down, because we all have those moments,
Sure.
you look at that and you go, no, this is absolutely, they're getting a deal when I give them this thing. And and reading, you're great at this, reading stories of clients who have won because of what you provided. Because on days where you're just kind of feeling vulnerable and you're feeling low, you need that reminder that you are changing people's lives, or you're it matters. So whatever those, it might feel cheesy, but put in some of those client testimonies. Write notes to yourself on why you think your product is the very best out there and why these people are lucky to have encountered your product and why they should buy this.
Yeah, I love that. It matters so much because I feel like for these ladies, when they remember that part, they're like, their heads held higher, their shoulders back. They're like, yeah, I can do this because they do love their business.
Right.
It's not just business. It is personal, especially when you're a solopreneur or a very small business.
Right.
Like it is you. You are the business. And so
Marshall Goldsmith, he has coached some of the top CEOs in the world. And he said something that was just brilliant. He said, it's not enough just to have a really amazing product. You know, we all think, oh, but we've got this amazing product. Shouldn't people just know and buy it?
Right.
No, there's a reason why these top, Southwest has a marketing team. You got to get the word out. You got to have someone advocate. So it doesn't mean, oh, but I've got a really great product. I don't need to kind of advocate for myself. Like, we all have to do it. Think about your favorite brands. You see marketing from all of those people. And it's because somebody's got to advocate and get that word out.
You know what, the intro story to my chapter on sales in Business Boutique was about Chris Stapleton. So before Chris Stapleton was who we know him as today, the day after, I guess it was the CMT Awards or CMA Awards, where he and Justin Timberlake did their duet that blew up the internet the next day. Everyone was Googling, who is Chris Stapleton, right? Like this guy appeared overnight. All of a sudden, he's just this amazing artist with this incredible music. No, my whole point of the intro story is he had been doing that for 20 years in bars and hole-in-the-wall places. But that award show and that duet did for him what marketing can do for your business. It shows the world how great you are.
Right.
It doesn't matter how great you are. If you're in your mother's basement, no one's going to know about it.
Right.
So you have to, I love that idea of advocating for yourself and just even telling people how great you are so that you can help them, so they can buy from you and it can make a difference. Sarah, I could talk to you about this all day because I feel like this is such a pain point. And so we'll have to have you back and just do part 2 of this because it's so tactical and something they need day in and day out in their business. But before we wrap up, I'd love to know, is there a book or tool or resource that you would recommend to these ladies as hey, this could really help you in just strengthening your sales muscle, putting some more tools in your tool belt? Because this is a topic that, like I said, I think they need a lot of help with and want that encouragement.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this the other day. My favorite book, and this is not going to be obviously sales, but it's called Power of Moments. And it's just about surprise and delighting and being different in your entire business. And I think that that's, to me, what sales is about is being different. Think about your very best sales experience. Why was that your very best sales experience with someone else? Like maybe you went to buy a
someone
car.
Helped you,
Yeah. Why was it that was so great? Because it didn't feel like a sales experience.
Right.
And so what I love is this Power of Moments book is all around building these awesome moments for your clients.
Yeah.
And so I won't go into, I have some favorite stories from there, but read it.
I
love it.
This is on my list, y'all. I've heard such great things about this book. And we've talked about this, Sarah, even kind of off camera, but that was my biggest takeaway from our fall Business Boutique event. For any of you guys that were there, you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't the bags. The speakers were great. It wasn't the AV or production. It was the moments. It was when I called the girl Macy, who's 14, from the top of the stands and on stage and gave her a book and this surprise and delight, something I made up 5 minutes before. Things that just, you see an opportunity to create a memorable moment. Right. And those are the things that people remember. Those are the things that make the experience so valuable.
Absolutely.
And so I love the idea of implementing that in your business, but also in sales. And it's that's where you build the relationships, and the sale will naturally follow when you have the relationship.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, Sarah, let's leave them with one action item. One okay, if I want to give you something to work on, here's something to practice, here's something to, a skill to try or a technique. Like, what is something that could be a takeaway for them that this week, as a result of this conversation, they're like, okay, it's outside my comfort zone, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to call this person up, or I'm going to ask this, I don't know. What is something that they could do to put it into practice?
Well, I'm going to tell you this is going to sound really cheesy, but this was, especially when I would get nervous, I would think about my client. We call them like our demographic, like who is our target person? And I would think about what are the 5 questions that if I get nervous on this call that I can ask this person.
Okay.
And I just wrote down those questions. And so I think if you just write down those questions and then you just practice them on your next couple of calls.
Okay.
And
like questions to get to know them.
Yes,
questions
to build rapport and build that trust and really understand what's going on in their life. Like, what are the questions I need to answer to really understand you, Christy, as a person, your pain point, what makes you tick, what are your hopes, what are those 5 questions? Yeah. And those become your go-to.
I love it. And then you have this script to follow and this kind of something that you can even practice in front of your mirror or your dog. And then it's a little bit less intimidating when you're actually on the phone with someone. I love it. Sarah, thank you for all you do. Thank you for how much you champion us. Y'all don't know this, but Sarah helps Business Boutique and lead Business Boutique in so many ways. And so thanks for taking some time to teach us about sales.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks so much for watching. And if you are interested in joining my online training and coaching group, the Business Boutique Academy, you can go to businessboutique.com or click the link below.